I always say publicly that if somebody gave my children pizza, we'll fight physically. Two things you don't do to my children. You don't take them to church and you don't give them junk food. I don't owe my children nothing else in life except three things. I make sure you have the best health, the best consciousness, and the best values. You're an honest person. Because the most difficult thing for an African to be is to be an honest person. Food is what we require to sustain life. Medicine is what we require to repair any part of life that is not functioning properly. If it's not functioning properly, we need to go to the body shop. If your car has a dent, go to the body shop. You don't live at the body shop. You go there when there is a problem. You don't live at the police station. You go there when there is a problem. Medicine is what we need when we misuse food or we underuse it. If you think food is medicine, when you get your best date, take them to the pharmacy. See whether you have that date tomorrow. If there is the biggest battleground in the world right now, it's not in Afghanistan or Palestine, it's in your gut. Because that's the engine. If somebody doesn't even remember your name or my name, I don't care. You can forget us. But don't remember this one aspect. Because of science, we've come to realize that we are 1% genetics, we are 99% microbiome. 1% genetics, 99% microbiome. So the microbiome are the bacteria that are around your ears, they're in your stomach, you have the microbiome. And they do the most work for you to be healthy.
All right, guys, before we get into the conversation, allow me to give a quick shout out to our friends at FarmSentry.ai. Now, I've been following this podcast for a while now. You know that I'm a huge believer in treating your farm as a business. And this is one of the biggest problems I see a lot of farmers have is that they don't take the farm seriously. You see them running the farms using WhatsApp groups, maybe phone calls, and just relying on the memory to keep their basic data. And this is why they almost always run their farms to the ground. Enter FarmSentry.ai. FarmSentry is a farm management platform that helps you really keep your records, manage your crops and livestock, plan your farm activities, track your expenses, and most importantly, it shows you if your farm is making money or not, all through your phone. Now, my favorite feature by far is the diagnostics tool. Let's say you're working on the farm and you see a leaf that doesn't look quite right, like this one, for example. All you have to do is just open your FarmSentry app, tap the diagnosis, take a photo, and ask the question, what's wrong with my leaf? And within seconds, FarmSentry analyzes the image, identifies the likely problem, and recommends what action you should take. And just like that, you are no longer guessing, and that is the power of AI right in your pocket. Right now, FarmSentry is offering a 30-day free trial. All you have to do is head over to FarmSentry.ai or simply search FarmSentry, that is Farm, S-E-N-T-R-Y, on Google Play Store or App Store, and you get to experience all these amazing features within FarmSentry. And when you like it, which I'm sure you would, be sure to use my coupon code ORGANICGUY for a 20% off. That is Organic Guy for a 20% off. All right, let's get into the conversation. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Organic Guy podcast. This is your home of organic conversations. I'm your host, the Organic Guy, and right around here we have conversations on how we can make our food systems really get to work for us rather than against us. And today I want to have a conversation around our food. It's something we do every single day, and I'm not sure we take time to actually talk about it and the impact it has on our lives. Today I have an internationally recognized food literacy expert, so he's gonna give us a little bit of history about our food, what our ancestors used to eat, and the impact colonialism had on our food systems in the African continent. You've probably seen him giving a lot of lecture on this particular topic. He goes by the name of Chef Njathi Kabui. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so very much. Seeing you for the second, actually talking to you for the second time, but seeing you for the first time. And yes, I'm very, very glad to be here. and you're doing great work.
You're also doing an amazing work, especially in giving light on our food systems and how we can better approach it, and giving us really a good context of how we got here in these food systems. So I'm very much interested to have a conversation around that, so that our viewers can have a better perspective on it. But before we get into that, I want you to give us a little bit of context about yourself and how you became who you are today, because I'm a huge believer of how you grow up plays a critical role on who you become later in life. So paint for us a picture. Where did you grow up? How was your environment like? If I was to come and ask some of your friends you were growing up with, how would they describe you? Would they say you're sort of a curious person, introvert, extrovert?
Very good place to start. That would give our listeners a very, very good context, because my work around food, I have to say, fortunately, stretches quite a distance, from where I was born in a very small village to living in the US for 35 years. Something that if you had told somebody who met me, like you said, when I was in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, they'll say never. It won't be Kabui on one side. But yet on others, they would say, I won't be surprised. And I'll give you the context. One, I was born in a small village in Moranga. In that time, it was Kangema. Those who are not Gen Zs know J.J. Kamodho was very, very popular minister in the previous government, Moi government. And that's where I was born. And I was literally born primed for this work, because my father, I didn't know then I was born, but my father has been very active in the struggle for liberation. Only 2 years ago, when I did a dinner for the still living members of the Mau Mau movement, did I find out what my father never told me, right? I would have almost punched him in the face for not letting me know that. But he was one of the 3 members of the Security Council. So the command, those are the big command in the region. So nothing major happened. No major attack happened, right, in the movement in that region without him being involved in the kind of way when he was there. So then that's one angle, you understand, before I was born. Because, okay, let me step back and say, one of the things that I've come to realize that we will be very, very, far much better equipped if we could, is expand our notion of inheritance. When people talk about we are fighting about our inheritance, people only think about the physical or the financial. But there's also the inheritance of culture and history and reputation. All those are very, very probably more powerful forms of inheritance, because money you can take, somebody can, disinherit you, but the culture they can not disinherit you. So for that, this is that's the angle at least I'm coming from. So that's my father, very, very deeply involved in activism. That's one angle. The second angle is that he had a restaurant in Nairobi towards Machakos bus station. And he lost that restaurant because of his activities in the struggle for Mau Mau. And one fighter came from the forest to come and get a gun that had been purchased using the underground system that existed to acquire weapons. And when he realized as he was being trailed, he knew one of the safe havens he could have was my father's restaurant. So he was armed, he walked into the restaurant, but he was being trailed. So when he walked in the restaurant, he went straight in the kitchen and told the guy in the kitchen, the chef, I'm being followed and I'm armed. He said, leave the gun under the gun bag and then take this basket and the chef jacket, like koti ya zamani, act like you're going to the farmer's market. And he passed the British authorities right at the entrance as they were coming in, and he left and he disappeared. In history, we don't know what happened. Because soon after that, they held up the restaurant. They separated the workers from the customers, and they ransacked the whole place, and they found the bullets. So soon after that, my whole family life changed. And that's probably when I took even before I was born, my course was already charted, because the person who snitched, they arrested everybody and some of them were executed. Then they took the restaurant from my father, and they changed the name to the name of the person who snitched. It was around 10:30, 10. Around lunch started at 11. The guy sat under the lunch counter, the cash register, and also hired people who were passing by. I need servers. And he took over a restaurant just like that. Right? And so that's it. So my father was arrested. He did six and a half years in detention and that kind of stuff. So that's my birth. Now I'm born. Obviously, that's the history. Now I'm born. I'm growing up with my mother. After independence, my father they opened with their friends another business on Luthuli, Munyu Road. And that's where he lived my entire life till he passed away. They had a two-story building. They owned and they operated a restaurant, a bar on top, and lodging. And he used to live on the very top. So that's my second home. I always there with my father like that. My mother was in the village. My father would all come on the weekends. And I'm growing 80 to 90% of the food we're eating. We're growing. We had animals, we had sheep, we had cows, we had rabbits, like that, you understand? Then at 10, I come to the city. I say, I don't want to live in the village. Coming to the city is so much fun. There's electricity. You go to the restaurants, the Indian restaurants, Arabic, Mediterranean restaurants from the coast. Man, I don't want to be here. So I pretended that I was sick all the time, and I moved to the city. Now that's where my second phase. I stayed in the city for 10 years, in the village 10 years, in the city 10 years, and I went into the US. And then I studied political science, philosophy at HBCU. I had a chance to go to HBCU. Then I went to graduate school. I did 2 masters, one in urban anthropology, one in medical anthropology. Because I understood now from undergraduate, I knew food, the most political thing you ever touch in your life is food. From just studying, watching black people. Memphis, which is where I went to school, was where Dr. King was killed. So it was a hotbed of the civil rights movement. That's where Dr. King was killed there. The university was right around the corner from the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was assassinated. So we used to go there. There was a lady who was protesting there. She didn't want the place to be converted into a museum, whatever. So, and then when it was eventually converted into a National Civil Rights Museum, then I was invited to speak because I was active as a student, So I don't know where I would end up. I'm just moving with the times. So when I finished grad school, then I realized now the next thing I need to do now, I'm understanding a little bit more of culture globally, and I'm understanding more of myself. Why did I grow up the same way I grew up? Why did I have issues that I did? And by the way, don't forget, when I moved to Nairobi at age of 10, I could not read or write. I was illiterate. I started learning how to write when I was in 4th grade, going to 5th grade. So some really big challenges, others great opportunities growing in the village. So when I got to the US and I study at a HBCU in graduate school, I'm getting a broader perspective and a deeper understanding of who I am and in my context in a global political system. That's what going to the US did. Yeah, and then I also for me, I'm always doing things opposite. Getting the US, by the 3rd month, my girlfriend was pregnant. So I'm going to college when I have a child already. I'm raising a child and stuff. But yeah, that was the best thing that happened to me because now I become a citizen and now it becomes easier for me and I didn't have money when I went there. So things just came to align. So yeah, so the big point here for you, especially for the listeners and for you as a young activist, is that it's so difficult for an African when you're just growing here. Until now, when we have the internet and stuff, we were just part of a very big global political system that we didn't understand. We only understood ourselves through the rearview mirror, but we don't know where we're going. But I think being in the US and having gone to a HBCU, then gone to a white school now for graduate school, then it really gave me a much more well-rounded perspective. I'm hanging with a lot of black people at HBCU, with some of the most radical activists who are still there during the Black Panthers, during the civil rights movement. They're hanging out in the black neighborhoods, man. There are people that I went to a lot of lectures. Khalid Mohammed, Farah Khan, you think all of them, man, will just go. I go to the mosque, and I'm not religious last thing I am. But I'll go there to observe people who are disciplined in the Nation of Islam. So those are the people I'm growing up with in college. So when I finished, now I asked myself, what is the responsibility of somebody who had the big fortune of gaining this broad experience about the world, coming from Kenya, from a small village, having gone this kind of, this pathway? What is my responsibility, especially of an educated black man? At that time, you're talking about 95 when I graduated. Then I got to 97 to the university at 2 years later. That was some of those experiences I had were not the usual thing that you expect that you find everyone who has that kind of perspective, made all these activists, had the opportunity to read. Some of the professors were really deep, professors at the HEBCU. They gave us a very, very deep understanding of, and not for school, they were teaching us for passion, right? That kind of thing. So I realized the one thing I could do, if I could only do one thing, is change our food system, work on our food. And then I should mention, because I was eating, I never went to a boarding school. Now I finished my history. I never went to a boarding school. I'm going to Isili Boys. I'm going to the Race Course Boy. I was always eating healthy food, and my father was very, very, very serious. And he wasn't educated. He wasn't exceptionally wealthy or anything. But when I was in Form 3, my father had to travel out of the city for some other work. For work, they had business elsewhere. So he paid for me to eat a 3-course dinner at a restaurant called Munawar in Isili. It was the best restaurant. So the students used to laugh at me, saying my father is stupid, he's paying so much. I was paying 150 shillings for tuition for one semester. So 450 for a whole year at that time. And I'm eating 20 shillings a day for lunch, 20 shillings a day. So 450 can 20 days, 22 days, so like and thing. So I still could not understand why my father was so serious about food until now. I go to the university in the US for the first time, and I'm living on campus. Out of my whole life, I've only stayed on campus for one semester, and my life was upside down because of the food. So by the time 91, I realized that, hey, I've been eating very well, by the way. I didn't know I was eating all this healthy food. Now I started eating organic food. So since 1991, I don't eat food that's not organic. If I'm traveling on the flight, I carry. Right now, I have food on my bag. I don't travel, and if there's no food, I don't eat. As an activist, we get arrested. If I get arrested, I don't eat. If I don't eat, I will not eat for 9 days is my limit. I'll just go 9 days without eating. Then if I have to eat, I'll drink water or eat one thing just to survive till I get out. But that's it. So that's my background. And so I worked with food. And now to conclude, the way I understood food politically, that's what I understand food politically. Culturally, yeah, but you have to understand the politics of food, because politics affects everything, even your own culture. So I designed my own cuisine. I call Afrofuturistic conscious cuisine. Afro because I'm deeply influenced by Fela Kuti, the most honest artist I know ever. And funny enough, the path of Fela Kuti and mine were parallel in ways that he was influenced by the Black consciousness movement in the United States. Sandra Isadoles is the one who invited him to California, and he made the Black Panthers, and he changed his music from the funk music he was playing to Afrobeat. The first song that he played is called Obe, and Obe means soup. That's the first Afrofusion. So food is all over, right? So Afro, because of Afro. I'm African, and Afrobeat. My influence Afro. Fela Kuti was the music my brother Franco was playing when I was 6 years old. Fela Kuti is a Nigerian, most popular Nigerian musician. He went to study in the UK. He was doing engineering, some other. Then he really fell in love with music. He was brought up in a Christian, background. Then he went to California. He met the Black Panthers, and his consciousness changed. And then he started Afrobeat. He's as influenced all this Afrobeat music. He's the father of Afrobeat. So that's Fela Kuti, right? So now Afro, futuristic, I eat for a very, very particular purpose. I eat to be here in the future. A lot of the times we eat to impress other people, for taste, but I think food in the context of making sure we as people of African descent first will be here in the future, right? Futuristic, conscious. I'm very, very conscious in every small detail that I do in cooking or in thinking about food and then cuisine. So that's what I did. And I also did this politically to also fight to do the greatest number of things I can do with one thing. You shoot one bullet and you kill 20 enemy soldiers like that. Yeah? So one is an intellectual bullet that I can raise the bar of African food to where it can be discussed at institution of higher learning. If you look at my profile, a lot of my work is, funny enough, is not mainly even in the black, right? I know where to attack, where to start. Is in the intellectual centers where ideas are being developed, in the universities and in museums. So I travel in many museums and stuff because I know how African consciousness has been falsified. We think we follow white people. That's what. So if people see you hanging with white people, they think you're better. You can kill. I don't care. I'm just telling you the reality, man, because I don't know any way to do it. You know? So I fight there so that I can enter ideas in high echelons. I also do really high-end cuisines, so that African food is not only indigenous food. Indigenous is good, but that's not only that. We are not going to win that. Nobody stays back, looks back. We go forward and we are very contemporary. We have to be very contemporary to deal with the issues that we have. And one of the areas I noticed that we are really, really lacking is in the intellectual realm of food. We are not writing about food. We are not arguing about food. We are not influencing and infecting other people's who are upcoming in our ideas of food. So, for example, I'll give you a very quick example and then I pause. You know, if I go to a university, for example, one of the biggest universities I've been at, the University of Michigan, they cook like 10,000 eggs, for example, to give you context. Those are broken eggs, yeah? And then they have others that are already bought. It's a very big university, very, very influential. So if I go there and speak to those students, and maybe one of those students become the CEO for some company, for example, and there's an African chef, and say, oh, we have an event, they are more likely to invite an African chef or to say, let's have African cuisine. Because I've already infected them with African ideas. You understand? So that's what I'm saying. I go to museum, which is the opposite end of powers in my analysis. Museums are the repositories of old culture and old money. Right? A museum doesn't make money. It's not a business, but it is the most powerful instrument of portraying power. You know, if you go to Europe, for example, I was in Germany. Germany has 33% of all the philharmonics in Europe. Or I think something like that. So because they have money, they can have these philharmonic museums. There are museums everywhere in Europe. Here you have like a couple of museums, and that's it. You understand? So I occupy museum. Now I'm in museum. I'm in universities. And then now it becomes easier for me to deal with my own people.
It's pretty interesting once you always tend to look back of where you come from, and then from that you can be able to connect how things sort of worked out. You talked about moving to the US and then the girlfriend having a child and they're not planning for that, and that turning out to be the best thing that ever happened, right? So I think when you look back, then you get to appreciate some of the things that have happened. And then for me, the most interesting thing I've also got from your story is you say at age 10 you were illiterate, literally you could not read, but then you went on to move to the US to study, to even study at institution of higher learning. So that is quite a transformation, and it just goes to tell you what you can do once you have like a particular vision that you want to pursue and then stick to it. So I'm wondering, so when you're moving from Kenya and then you're going to the US, is there some sort of culture shock that's happening?
Wonderful question. So I should say now that you say that, just for context for anybody who might find this relevant to their situation in life. I was illiterate, could not read and write and stuff. But when I graduated from the university, I was a second student, number 2 in the whole university. So there was Valley Victoria and there was me. And then my father came, right? And then my father got a key to the city because I knew the mayor. Again, politics, but always being conscious and being aware and being honest and work. Yeah, that kind of thing. So now, very, very, very complex question and very important question. In some certain ways, I felt more at home with African Americans about certain things. African Americans had a very deep respect for African culture, at least where I was. Then I had this African family that adapted me, and they are still my family now. Although I'm not I don't have marital relationships with the family, but I'm still their family. When the grandfather or my great grandfather of my daughter was retired, I was invited to be the speaker for this. Yeah, so a lot of things I really have mad respect for African Americans. Yeah? So that, but then also we have differences, as you should expect, because we are different people. And Africans and African Americans and Africans also are two oppressed groups of people, right? But they are the same family, but they are oppressed. And when people are oppressed, we have a scarcity mentality about certain things, or we have false culture, what I say, falsified culture, negative culture. Because for you to be enslaved or be colonized, you have to be socialized in valuing other people above yourselves. And it's true, they have more power than you, so you think, yeah, they have power, yeah, you understand? So those are the two realities I have to contend with, and I have to balance. And I also have to take them into context, not to blame you because you have an English name, no, like, yes, hey, yeah, these people gave us English name because you could not go to school if you don't have an English name here in those times, that kind of thing. So yeah, so I understand that, but African Americans in general, I had the greatest relationships with them.
Yeah, pretty interesting that you say you can sort of relate to each other because of the oppression that both groups have gone through before. There's so many things to touch on, but I want us first to go back for you to give us a little bit of context, especially when it comes to food. You mentioned your father was part of the Mau Mau that was fighting against the colonialists, but help paint a picture for us before the colonialists arrived in Africa. How were Africans interacting, especially with food? What was their relationship with food?
Maybe the first thing that is I would like to mention, least I forget, is if you have a good relationship with a friend or a girlfriend or a wife, or you remember the first time you met, and how it was. I saw her with her friend, or we were in the same game, whatever it is, yeah? And then we're in the same bus or airplane, whatever. Then you remember that. So I think Africans should remember, at least in my cultural context, that the first memory that I would probably propose for us to sit on, right, and to process, is that amongst the Kikuyu, when the Europeans came, two things, very, very important things happened. One, the Europeans were surprised that there was so much food, and because they were traveling using oxen, and they're cutting it, so they're traveling. And a lot of places they will go, they will not get as abundant food. So, and they have to carry food because they don't know whether they'll find more food like that, right? So when they came to my region, they bought a lot of food. And one elder said, don't sell the food, at least in my community. Oh, they say, oh, these people have trinklets. They are saying you can get a mirror or something. And they sold food. And the next year, there was a famine. That famine was called the famine of white people. Ngaraguya Modogo. Because they sold all the food to them. There was a famine and a lot of people died. Right? So that's famine. But they came there. The second thing I want to mention in context of how our food was is that not exactly as at the beginning of it, but during the early interactions, Europeans realized that Africans didn't have cavities, at least in my community, Kikuyu, and it's recorded in Southern Kikuyu before 1903 by Luce Leakey. She said, how come you guys don't have cavities? It's not possible for these savages not to have cavities, right? I'm going to give a bet. I'll give somebody some money if they can find one person with a cavity. And they never did. That bet was never taken, right? So those two things, right? So that creates context of what I'm going to say. So Africans, as most indigenous people, have a very, very localized and very elevated consciousness around food. And the importance of food, there were granaries, how you preserve food. If you went, because I work with a lot of seeds, for example, another example, if somebody traveled because they were selling pots or they were selling cow skins, whatever they were selling. And they found a seed that they can grow in their area that they're not familiar with. They'll bring that seed back to their community. If you ask that person, where did you get the seed? The common response was, God gave me these seeds. God gave me these seeds because it was so important to add a new seed to our food shed that we didn't have, that it's sacred, becomes sacred. Now you understand why I bring a lot. Okay. Now, so you understand. Now I go back. I'll give one last example of another community which is very African, and that's why I call my food Afrofuturistic. I don't want to talk about my own people. So among the Dogon people in Mali, there is one person who, and you know the Dogon came from Egypt. Then when Kemet fell, it was in Egypt, ancient Egypt fell. There was invaded by the Hyksos, the Greeks, the Romans. But especially when the Muslims came, the Dogon didn't want to convert. So they left, and they ran away. So they were living in the caves in Mali. They have very sophisticated science. But when it comes to food, there was one person who was appointed, and they sat on a rock, very high elevated rock. They don't marry, they don't have children. They only sit on this rock, and the village provides them with food and firewood every day. So one person is appointed, take that to the Hogan, take the firewood and food to the Hogan every day. And so breakfast and dinner. So when you go there in the morning as well in the evening, the village community member will ask, give the food, but in return they'll ask, is there any message for the community, for the village? Say no. This person cannot be touched. If you touch the Hogan, he is killed. If you touch him like that, he's killed. And another one is appointed. His job is to only observe the stars and the planets. And that way he knows when the rains are about to come. So one time he will bring the food and say, okay, tell the tell the community to start preparing the fields. See what I'm saying? So very, very elevated consciousness about food so that we make sure we have food security. So I think this is what you find amongst the bush people from Mali, Egypt, going to South Africa, Zimbabwe, the very, very elevated consciousness about food. That in order to colonize a people, you have to deliberately erase this consciousness. So this consciousness. So I'm not too caught up with just indigenous food, right? But as I am with the consciousness. Because if you have this consciousness, it's like an artist. If I tear down the piece of an artist, if you're Picasso or you're a great artist, right? Then you can always draw another one. So if you have the right kind of consciousness around food, that gets the best results from every situation you put. When I go to the US, I'm not in my village. I don't have land to grow food in the US, but I still use my consciousness to get the best food and to feed my children the best food. I always say publicly that if somebody gave my children pizza, we'll fight physically. Two things you don't do to my children. You don't take them to church, and you don't give them junk food. I don't owe my children nothing else in life except three things. I make sure you have the best health, the best consciousness, and the best values. You're an honest person. Because the most difficult thing for an African to be, under the circumstances, whether you're African Americans, you're African, I don't care. The most difficult thing, most difficult task that you have is to be an honest person. Because now when you have limited resources, you have exploited people, what is the most natural reaction? For you to exploit other people. They say, hurt people. If you've been hurt, you're going to hurt other people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite interesting. You talked about I understand the part where your children should not be fed with junk food. But what about going to church? What's the big deal with that?
It's very easy. Well, but we just, I made it very, I try to be I'm very complex in my thinking, but I try to be very methodical. Told you, consciousness, right? Think about just one concept. When my Kimathi was arrested, as well as other African revolutionaries, they would be advised to convert, to be saved. And Dedan is not his name. He didn't have that name for more than a week. Dedan Kimathi, that's what I say. He wasn't Dedan Kimathi. He was Kimathi Wawashiri. But when he was captured, the priest was there in the jail because the priest is part of the system and he's allowed to go in there and he converted them. Why would a Bible be stealing everything physical you have on earth? But promise you that we'll be together in heaven. Why? Because it's an instrument of what? Of changing people's consciousness. So I don't want my children to have any false ideas about themselves. And nothing, at least in my view, nothing undermines African consciousness than foreign religions, whichever one you are. Because then it literally takes you from who you are. Yeah, and you have these foreign ideas, Now, other people who are determining what day you go to church. In the Seventh-day Adventists, okay, Saturday we don't go. These other people, Friday, that's their prayer. These other people, is Sunday. For the same God, and you can only see me on this side.
I think that from that perspective, it makes sense. And I'm also wondering, when you talk about consciousness, can it be interpreted as the same thing as knowledge? Because I'm thinking so let's say my grandmother, for example, had the knowledge that some indigenous foods were very useful for a pregnant woman, for example. So can you sort of put that in the same category as consciousness and knowledge, or those are two different things?
So consciousness is what I call being. Being, you're conscious. He's unconscious. That's why they say they're unconscious, right? And funny enough, I would not be me if I don't talk about Greek in my interview, because I understand the politics, the modern day politics, through the understanding of Greek mythology and Greek culture. And I get a lot of flack from my Afrocentric brothers because they misunderstand why I talk about Greek and write about Greek so much. I don't write Greek because I think Greeks are superior than anybody else, or because I think they're better than us or anything. I write about Greek and speak about Greek. One simple reason: to bring to fore in our consciousness how Greek we are without realizing it. And if we don't understand Greek, it's like somebody manipulating you from remote control. Right? For example, I'll give you. So the word, when you say you're hypnotized, right? That's a Greek god, hypnos. The Greek god. You see what I'm saying? So there are all these Greek things that are feeding us. So consciousness is what is being. When you say I'm conscious, or I'm hypnotized. When you say you're hypnotized, I wanted to bring that Greek in order to elaborate on this, right? When you say you're hypnotized, that means somebody's controlling you. Are you dead? You're not dead. You're still living, but somebody's controlling you. When you're conscious, okay, I'm conscious, that means you can think. So it's being. You see what I'm saying? So one last story. The penguins always migrate back to where they were born, right? So they're born there, then they go so far. When they have to mate, male, female, they walk together very far in the very cold weather, and they sit on an egg. And because it's in the freezing temperature, they can't let the egg touch the ground. So what the penguin does, it is hold the egg between its leg and then sit on it because it's fat. It's been eating all spring, and it keeps the egg warm during the winter. So sometimes it gets so cold, and that's where they have to be male and female because they have to help. Sometimes the female gets so hungry, says the male, hold the egg, and he can't touch the ground. So he'll pass the egg to the male, and he'll go and find food for her. When he comes back, because they've gone through so much hell to have a chick, the chick might die. One, which is where it's more powerful. If the mother comes back and the chicks have already been hatched, You know how the mother is able to identify its chick? From the sound. Consciousness. That's consciousness. Now, finally, in the same length, sometimes the chick dies for, like we know, that's life. And one penguin say, heck no. I'd rather it be somebody else losing the chick, not me. So he'll steal somebody else's chick. And he's the only one. If this happens, all the other penguins stop what they are doing. They jump on this penguin because he'll take the baby and sleep on it because they'll know they'll try to snatch it back. And all of them will come and take the chick and give the chick back to the mother. Saying that to say that that's consciousness. We have a consciousness of justice that we don't, because we know if we allow it to happen to somebody else, for somebody to lose their chick, the next time it will be me. And we are staying in this kind of environment where anything goes, people are corrupt. You understand? So I'm only using those things to demonstrate consciousness to our listeners, that when you're conscious, you can communicate with something you've never seen. You've never seen your chick, you never had your chick before, but you heard that sound and it tells you, that's my blood. So this is consciousness. So when I talk about African consciousness, I'm talking about how we were at our finest. Were we perfect? No, but we were on our process, on a very natural process where we were growing and we were progressing. You understand? So that's what consciousness. So it's not knowledge. Knowledge is where you'll go to get the food, or the knowledge, what you need to trap the fish, that's knowledge. But the consciousness is who you are. If I'm corrupt, I'm corrupt. If you change my consciousness to be corrupt, it doesn't matter what you do. You can jail me, I'll leave. I'll still go steal my wife for my friend, my brother. I'll disinherit my brother, like that. So it's a consciousness. So I saw Africans have a false consciousness. It's not our consciousness. If we had our own consciousness, it will move us forward. And I don't have to ask anyone. You won't have to ask me, oh, are we conscious? Are we hypnotized? You just look at how we are doing. Look at how we are relating. And you can tell we are not relating as normal human beings.
I think that explanation makes a huge difference as well. So it also gives an individual sort of responsibility for themselves to pursue this consciousness, right? Because it's very hard for themselves to go to another person and sort of try to show them path. Maybe they can direct them and give them tips on how they can become more consciousness, but it has to be held in them themselves to say, you know what, I want to be more conscious. I want to be more aware of what's happening within my environment. So I think you've given us a really good context about what was happening before we were in our consciousness sort of development, before it was sort of disrupted. So we are living our lives, our culture, we are doing our own thing, and then colonialist comes into Africa. So how does that impact then us as Africans, especially since we're talking about food?
Oh, wonderful. So what my travels and study abroad has helped me understand is that you have a consciousness that's driving the world, just like, which is the basis of the political system you see. The political system is a manifestation of the consciousness. So this consciousness is unjust, is vampiristic. A vampire is what feeds on other people. So it's vampiristic. So when these people come, they were received as guests, which is what everybody in those days would do if you travel somewhere else, as long as you're in peace. For example, I'll give you a quick example. The Maasai and the Kikuyu community used to raid each other, but they were not enemies. They didn't have a consciousness of enemies, because they would have peaceful periods where they say, oh, we've lost so much of our population because there was a pandemic or there's a famine, please let us not raid each other. And they will do that, right? But then there are other times when the Maasais would have epidemics and they'll lose a lot of cows. They'll bring their wives and their girls to the Kikuyu community and they say, hey, can we leave these my wife at your homestead, Omboke, and my young daughters, and me and my boys will go to the farthest Tanzania. They will have Maasai cousins there. We'll go and enrich ourselves there, work with them and then they can pay us with a few cows. So it might take 5, 7, 10 years to get enough herd, and then they'll drive back and they'll come to you and okay, wapi bibi yangu? Where is my daughter? Oh, she got married, man. And this is, you understand? So there's so fun. Then the other thing, very, very important, is that when they are reading each other, they'll have their own intelligence. There's surveillance, yeah. This is the best time. Now they're dancing, the smiles, right? So sometimes it will happen that the information is incorrect. So you're thinking they're traveling to celebrations huko Kisii, and then they decide, because it rained there, the river flooded, we got a report, we are not going to go. So you go there and you find them there. So what I found fascinating is that whenever the Maasai and the Kikuyu would run into each other abruptly when they are going to raid each other, the two communities will not fight. What they would say, bring your leader, and they fight. If the leader wins, if our leader and we are raiding, you get out of the way, we go get the cows. If you beat our leader, we take our ass back. You understand? So I'm drawing consciousness, right? So back to my point. My point is, you have a vampiristic consciousness. Now we're seeing the political manifestation of this consciousness. So what I did understand before I went to the US, which I understand very well, is that everything that happened after our contact with the Europeans was that we were being co-opted to be agents of this consciousness to fulfill their need. So politically, we are politically being co-opted to feed their consciousness, because that's how a vampire drinks blood to stay alive. So this consciousness is staying alive, being fed by the politics of the day. So you come, you take the resources, you take the slaves, they take the Native Americans land like that, right? Understand? So that is how the politics of the day are. Now, when you understand that we are part of a very global system, and we have a role to play. And whenever we try to get out of that role, we are put right back. So if our role is to accept Ebola or according to this global system, then that's what it is. So that's what we have to understand. And that's, I think, the biggest stride we can make. If you're going to solve a problem, you have to understand the problem. You cannot solve what you don't understand. So you have to understand that is where we are in this hierarchy, yeah? Or in this false consciousness or consciousness created by the vampiristic culture. And it doesn't have to be just driven by white people. Black people can be agents, but still of that. Yes. So when we say we want black president, we want our leaders. Yeah, you can have your leaders, but what consciousness are they advancing?
Yeah. So the colonists, so in our case, for example, in the Kenyan context, so of course we had the British come into Kenya. I'm guessing was it in the 19 or 1800s?
1889, 1890 is when they first came. And then by the time you say 1900, 1903 is the Ordinance Act, when all the land was Crown Land Ordinance, when all the land was placed under the Queen. The land that wherever you're living in Kisii, the land is the Crown land. It belongs to the Queen. And you're only living there at the behest of the Queen. So the Queen can move you from Kisii and take you to Kombani, because all is their land.
Yeah, so she has all the powers to compel you to do what he likes. So they come into Kenya, and of course, every culture have their own food, the bananas or it's potatoes. The indigenous maize that are already there. Yes. Are they comfortable with this food? Are they able to consume this food, or are they insisted, for us, we like coffee, so we want you to plant coffee for us, or we like tea. So how does that interaction affect the local communities?
So just like me, when I went to the US, I was going there for a very particular purpose. I wanted to study. I wanted to advance myself, at that time as a young person. I was curious to see the West. We're seeing all these Western movies, Hollywood. So I'm curious, yeah? So for them, they knew exactly what they wanted. Germany, for example, was very limited in land. because Germany was shut out from, and actually what led to the first European war, what people call World War. It's the European War, right? And the reason why is because Germany was cut out from the access to land in Africa. They didn't have big colonies. So they said, people who are big thinkers, political thinkers in that system, knew that Germany would have big problems in the future. Number one, if their population grew, where are they going to get resources from? Where are they going to grow food? Where are they going to get mine? So they say, you know what? If you shut me up from Africa, I'm going to take Europe. So I'm going to get land in Europe. That's what happened, right? Now, so when they came, my point is they had a very particular, so Germany was running out of space. Yeah, the population is growing, and they need more resources. Yeah, like that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they needed minerals that are needed. You have something like rubber. You know, right around the early 1900s, you're talking about the Ford motor vehicle. Ford is becoming 1920, 1930, is making motor vehicles, right? But before that, it was bicycles. Now, bicycles, they need a rubber. A rubber tree takes between 25 to 40 years before it can really mature to produce rubber. So where do you find rubber? In Congo. That's where the largest source of rubber. So the monster leopard, King Leopard, has control over the Congo, right? So so they knew these things after the Renaissance. Technology is moving, knowledge is moving. They'll require these mineral resources, and then they find this place that's so rich with minerals, and not really very sophisticated political system in them. People who can like that. So that's why. So in terms of food, food. They want coffee. Coffee came from Ethiopia, so they didn't have a problem with the food. They didn't have a problem with the food. The food was better than food they could find in Europe. Yeah. It's plenty of them. Yeah. In fact, so much so, in one of the books about King Leopold, called King Leopold's Ghost, the people, it's called. I don't remember the particular name of the group because I don't want to call the wrong name. But when they heard, this particular group heard that there are this band of raiders that are destroying communities, the only reason why they think people raid other people is they're hungry. So they put the food on the walking pathways, highways. Thinking that when the Belgians soldiers will come, they'll find the food, they'll leave. They didn't. I think they're called the Bakungas. But anyway, so see, food was not an issue. The politics is what drove. So they say these people, politics bad, but they want this food. I was walking around Germany in Hamburg one time when I was taken to a 3-star Michelin hotel called the Table. We ate 9 courses dinner at a cost of 85,000 Kenya shillings per person. And this guy has money. He flew from Cologne to Hamburg. I was working there. I had an event there. And he came after the event and we walked 3 hours. And then we had a dinner for 3 hours. That dinner, 9 course, took 3 hours. A story for another day. We can do a whole interview. The whole is all white. Only one person worked in that restaurant. And he's a dishwasher. But the point is, when we were walking, every single street I observed, I was very, very careful to observe. Every single street had more than one coffee joint. Every single street. I could not go on a street. And I asked myself, can you show me anything else that is consumed by the whole entire world that came from that particular region, and that particular region is poor? You can tell me you find Toyotas everywhere, and the people who are building Toyotas are poor, like that. You understand? So the idea is the consciousness that they created about our food being backwards and their food being really fine and all this. And I was very observant. I took a lot of pictures. I have videos of the place, and I hopefully hope to write about the experience at the table. I was phenomenal. So you understand. So European food, finish to say, European food can fetch 85,000. What's the most expensive African food you've had?
I have personally eaten it's probably 5,000.
So I've made a menu for 30,000 per plate. So now I'm changing. So now you understand the politics. That you start changing the way we think about food. Yes, is it indigenous? No, it's my idea. It's a creation. If I use the example of Picasso. Picasso is a European using African concepts, but he's a European. That's European art. He's a European artist. I'm a Kenyan. Food is Kenyan creation. But so people say, where is Kenyan food? Am I not a Kenyan? It's my own food. This food is not anywhere. It's food I created. Why do you want to appropriate my cuisine from me and make it European? I'm not making European. I don't make European cuisine. I have my own interpretation of all the foods, and I combine indigenous food, and I tell stories. I've never cooked anywhere I didn't speak, because I'm not just a caterer, and I don't do catering. No, I'm not caterer. I'm not kidding down caterer, but I'm explaining the politics in food. That if I'm interested in being politics food, I speak. Why? Because, by the way, now I'll go take you final slide in the Greek. You know, the Greeks used to say that, which are a lot of the things you see are Greeks. Nobody can tell me they're less than 60% Greek if they're educated. 60% minimum, at least 50%. I can say, I'm taking 50, and I can argue. So the Greeks used to argue that there are two ways of conquering a person. I can come with an army, I can take Kenya. That's one way of conquering. The second way, infecting them with your ideas. Now you understand, I take back to my children. I don't want anybody to get in. People say, I learned when I was young from African Americans. The first person to your children's head always win. I don't want my children to have other people's ideas in them before my own. I stayed home. I was a stay-at-home dad, taking them everywhere, talking to them in Kikuyu. I won't speak to my children in English. So they understand, because I'm infecting them with my ideas. So you understand? So when I make my cuisine, I know why I'm making my cuisine. I'm not just making for money. Money is made, it's print money. American prints paper and it becomes money. So that's a lot of power. So I'm not interested in that. I know where the power, at least for me, is infecting people with my ideas. You eat my food, that's very powerful for you to eat my food. But even more powerful, take my ideas with you. Because the food ideas will not go. Food you will forget, you get hungry. This idea will stay there. You can erase it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the earlier you get the information, I think the better it becomes. Because the older we go, then the harder for new ideas to get integrated in what we do. So there's that. And then I would assume the average person in Kenya or in the world, their food literacy awareness is probably very low. Why do you think that's the case?
The idea of food literacy harks back to our discussion about consciousness. If you have power, you prepare or you indoctrinate the masses with ideas that help you project your power forward. So if you enslave Africans, you make sure you erase their culture, you erase their names, you erase their gods. That way you're sure, even if you die, the descendants of these colonized or enslaved Africans will continue to serve your children. That's how you stay in power. It's nothing but a power game. So the level of illiteracy around food is a weapon, is a very useful weapon at the hands of those in power globally, because they will continue to disinform the people they exploit, and they reduce the chances of those people being aware of their own condition, of their own power, and overthrowing those people in power.
So does that mean then this whole idea sort of lays in the person themselves? So let's say there's these people, a certain section of power who are very much endowed to keep the masses that way, sort of enslaved in that point. At what point then do we put the responsibility on the masses? And we are like, hey, look, you're being enslaved here. How about you actually wake up?
You analyze, always first by analysis. We analyze this is what these people are doing. And we can go deeper and say it's only a small group of people who are using their race, or whatever, their culture. Only very small people have power, have real power. Okay? That's what we do that analysis. Now, we come to the other side. We say, okay, now we understand, it's going to rain tomorrow. It's be flooded. So what do? How do we respond? So those are two different issues. So now we talked about this time. Now let's talk about now the people on the other side. A people, in every group of people, there's always a small section of people who are conscious at any given time. Even during slavery, that at the lowest point in the American South, when slavery was so brutal, there are still people whose consciousness cannot be quelled. It's almost practically impossible for you to be so powerful where you can kill the consciousness. The consciousness is not like land. You can come and take all Kenyans' land. And that's why I told you, when I feed people, people can eat. For me, I'm interested in their head. Because if I can plant that seed in consciousness, it will grow, right? So there's always a small group of people, whether it's the likes of my father and his colleagues, who say, even when it's so thick, we're going to fight these people, even when we don't have anything. So there's always that point. So my point is, the work is on the small group of people who know or whose consciousness is still relatively solid. And their job is to make sure, just like these people are trying to infect every masses of these masses with their ideas, that you counter it by infecting also with true consciousness, honest consciousness, true consciousness. It's simple. It's a number of games. And whoever wins, somebody will win. And it doesn't mean because you're winning today, you'll win tomorrow. Doesn't mean because you've lost today, you'll lose tomorrow. But what is at the heart of it is that core group of people, right? Okay, we have, intellectually, people have issues with Du Bois when he said the talent, the strength. But I think, I personally don't have, and I got a scholarship, W. Du Bois scholarship. Yeah? So we studied Du Bois quite a bit. And I'm not saying he's perfect, but intellectually, in that idea that you have to start with people who knows, right? And these people who are in the know create mechanisms to spread these ideas to the masses and to raise the consciousness of the masses. But the university, I went to the US because there are very few universities in Kenya. And although I was in second in my graduating class, I was not admitted here in the university in Kenya. You see what I'm saying? Because the opportunities are so few, but also the environment that I was in, I was still in the journey of literacy and being academically more prepared. So maybe I wasn't nearly as prepared. I didn't have the tools and the like, maybe for whatever reason, right? But when I go and I have a different environment, then I could thrive. You see, like that. So that is what we as people who know something should do, is to make sure you spread it.
Yeah, so that's why this kind of conversations are important. Then a lot of people can listen to it and then be like, oh, okay, that made sense. And maybe they can go on a rabbit hole themselves. They're like, oh, okay. You mentioned about this issue of food colonizations. How did it affect our grandparents? And then they can go in that rabbit hole. So the whole point is to be sort of spark an ignition in someone's mind, so that they can follow that path. You've been talking about food is politics, in a sense, and so I'm trying to pinpoint it from a food perspective. When you talk about food, how does then politics affect it?
Food politics is probably one of my most favorite thing to talk about. You can call me at 3 a.m., 3:30 in the morning and say, politics, I'll go. So, quick example for an African. This is one example I like to give. It's because for its brevity, and I think it has quite an impact if somebody gets it. So listen to this story. one of the first countries Hitler invaded was Dutch, the Netherlands. So where you were, yeah. So when he invaded Netherlands, that year, it happened to be the coldest winter in 100 years. So the German soldiers could not get supplies from Germany. So the commander told the soldiers in Netherlands to go and to the local population and take food from them. So, and that's what they did. They went everywhere. If they come to ransack your house, if they any food, they take. So that winter was very, very horrible. There was big famine. And what happened is, at the end of the winter, then the supplies could be supplied, and that's over. So the war, whatever, that left there was no longer in the news, right? Rather, people who are hungry, they were able to get food. Who died, they died, right? But 50 years later, the doctors started noticing something very, very strange. A certain group of people born within 3-month period, they are all obese. The doctor can look at the chart, and say, okay, Omboke, born 1942, August, so 9 months later. Yeah, so from August, then 9 months later is February, December 1943, for example, 9 months later, right? Or within that range. Even before they walk in, they say, hey, Omboke is going to be obese. And true, 90%. True. So the doctor studies, why is it that these people who are born within 3 million, they are almost all obese? So a professor from one of the universities was commissioned to do a research and find out why. Their book came out called The Dutch Winter Hunger. And that's a concept. And it turned out that the people whose mothers were pregnant in their 3rd trimester, during the time that the soldiers were taking the food from them, their mothers starved. So their brain were wired for scarcity. So they always live knowing that the hunger is around what? The corner. So they become obese. So hold on. White people get screwed up and effed up for 3 months and they are changed for life. What do you think happens to black people over hundreds of years, thousands of years since the fall of Kemet? And we don't think that food is going to affect. This thing affects these white people because of a 3-month challenge during the winter, one effing winter. And we have crisis. So we have to understand that because of this relationship, we as Africans, that food has to be political. How can it not be political? Yes, and you're colonized. These people are invaded, okay, for only a small period. Now they are free country, you went to study there. Right? What about us? We are still invaded. Right? We have to understand that our food, you have always to expect. If you hear the burglars breaking your door, breaking the gate, they come in and they break the door. Then they break the door of your bedroom. You can't say, oh, I'm cool, man, I can go to sleep. You have to say, man, what these people have. Yeah, you understand? So for that reason, food is politics. That's not. Finally, I say, the way you gain power in politics is having something that everybody needs. Everybody needs. If you're the president of this country or any country, whatever you do affects everyone. So if you are to, I say, if everything has a God, the God of food will be the most powerful. And Midas, the story of Midas taught us that you touch everything, you'll become gold. Then what would you eat? How would you eat? You touch food, it becomes gold. Can you eat gold? No, you cannot eat gold. So it's a very good fable. So these people know if somebody controls your food, it doesn't matter what kind of house you're living in. It doesn't matter what kind of car. They control your food. You're a damn slave to them.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned that way because, for example, in a Kenyan perspective, we saw, I think the government had an agreement with the US government that for them, they will start purchasing, GMO maize into Kenya. Yes. So part of the agreement was the US will allow us to export let's say textile and some other clothes. So that's part of a subtle way in which food is actually being politicized in a way, and is being used as a leverage of saying, hey, if you want to access our markets, you also have to allow our GMO poison into your people as well. And it's the same thing we are seeing with the explosion of fast foods as well in the country, the KFCs in the country that never used to be there. Yes. So I think from that perspective, then it makes all of sense that, hey, maybe it's time we actually see what food is. It can be very much used as a political tool.
You know, the way you domesticate any animal is to feed it. If you feed something so long, you domesticate it. And now, once you domesticate an animal, it's no longer itself. It's no longer a wild cow. If the cow, it just waits for dairy meal, super napier, okay, he doesn't know how to forage. If you domesticate a dog, the dog just waits and wags its tail. It's time to eat. I want more. I want food. I want, right? It can't think for itself. If you want to control a people and you control their food, then they will always need you. You know, the dog comes wagging its tail. Master, yeah, the dog will go and hunt at something, but he's hungry. He'll bring it to you, and he'll wait for you to decide, I'll eat this rabbit, and I'll give you the bones. But the dog used to hunt the rabbit for itself before when it was wild. Right? So when you control a people and make sure that they cannot feed themselves, and you create the environment where they are reliant on you, then they are totally in your control.
Yeah. I saw you give a very interesting take. You don't subscribe to the phrase that food is medicine.
No, I don't. You know, we have to be very, very clear about certain nuances. You know, there is Luhyas, for example, and within Luhya community, there are other sub-communities in the Luhya, in the Kalenjin, in the Kikuyu. See, same thing, yeah? And you should not erase those nuances for goodness sake, because there are certain words we use. For example, in Kikuyu, the Merus don't use the word. So if you're in Meru or in Embu, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. One time, my community, my family went to the in-laws in Embu, Kirinyaga area, because one of their daughters had received a baby. So people went to go out and see the baby. Yeah? So there is a word they use. They say "kogowatamuana" is to hold the baby. In that culture, means to screw someone. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be very, very careful. So when they say we came to hold the baby, it's toka kogowatamuana. You come to screw the baby? You understand? So small nuances are very important. Now I tell you, food is what we require to sustain life. Medicine is what we require to repair any part of life that is not functioning properly. If it's not functioning properly, we need to go to the body shop. If your car has a dent, go to the body shop. You don't live at the body shop. You go there when there is a problem. You don't live at the police station. You go there when there is a problem. Medicine is what we need when we misuse food or we underuse it. Then we are sick normally. Yeah, or there is an emergency. It's an emergency. I make fun and say, if you think food is medicine, when you get your best date, take them to the pharmacy. See whether you have that day tomorrow. You will not, right? Now, I tell you why. As a person who is very interested in food, I've been searching the literature about where possibly this concept of food being medicine came from. I was able to trace it to the Greeks. In the book, the Iliad, the first two books to be published in the European Western world is the Iliad and the Odyssey. In the Iliad, which is the first one by Homer, there is a war between the Trojans and the Greeks. Okay? And they fought. This war lasted for 10 years. And both sides, obviously, they have generals, they have fighters and soldiers. On the side of the Trojans, there is a king Priam, and he has 49 sons. And almost all of them die from the fight. The best one, Hector, is going to inherit the kingdom, and he will run. He's killed by the Greeks. So he realizes, man, we are fighting this war. Now my son is killed. And he was killed in a very, very horrendous way. After being killed by the most brilliant soldier on the side of the Greeks. And Troy was a walled town, city. And very interesting, important thing to mention about the wall of Troy. It was impenetrable. That's why the Greeks could not penetrate the wall. Because supposedly it was built by the gods. Apollo. It was very well built by the Greeks. You can't go through this wall, right? So when the most powerful Greek soldier killed Hector, he dragged him with a horse around the wall to humiliate him and then took the body. So the king broke all protocol and crossed the war boundary, and at night went to see this brilliant Greek soldier who killed Hector. And he begged him. They are arch enemies. Say, man, please think of your father. Because I'm a father, my son has died. How would your father feel if his son died and he's not able to bury him? How do you think your father would feel? If you think he would want to bury his son, please allow me to take my son and bury him. This Greek soldier was so wild. He was so tough. And he was so hard-headed through the whole story. For the first time, he became human. He said, you're right, man. If my father was looking at me, wanting to bury me, man, it would be so mean if somebody doesn't give my body to my father to bury. So, yeah, I'll give you your body. Say, but because now remember, the body is really badly mutilated. He said, let the nurses first prepare the body and we'll give it to you. So you go and come back. When the body is prepared, we'll give the body to you. Okay. So when the king came back for Troy, and he came to pick up the body, the Greek told him, look, you can't take the body yet until we eat. We have to eat first. And they both ate. Yes. Now, these are enemies, people who have been fighting for 10 years. And then the king, who has lost his last son, looked at his enemy, the warrior who killed his son. And it's the last words. Go read it in the Iliad. He said, when I looked at him, he was so beautiful. He had a deathless body. When you eat food is so powerful. So don't say food is medicine. Now, but where did they come from? When this Greek soldier was going to kill the Trojan soldier, he was going to do that because his best friend had been killed by the soldier. Matter of fact, he said he would not fight because of another story. But the point is, he was so concerned, if I go to fight, this body will rot of my best friend, will rot before I come back. So he said, I have to pray to the gods. The gods told him, go and put ambrosia on the body of your best friend. It's called Patroclus. And even if you fight for 100 years, that body will be just as good as if he died today. Then Odysseus, one of the advisors, said, why don't you eat with the army before you go and fight the Trojans now? He said, who needs the food? I don't need the food. So he put the same ambrosia. And ambrosia is the food of the gods. The food of the gods is called ambrosia in the Greek mythology. He puts it on his lips and then went to fight. For the first time, at least in me, the first place I've seen in what I've studied, where something was both food and medicine. It was medicine because it will preserve the body for 100 years. It's food because once you rub it, you don't need to eat. So this concept comes of food is medicine. But food is no medicine. Please don't diminish the value and the pleasure of food. You don't take the medicine smiling. Who takes the food by medicine smiling? It's easy when people eat food for the medicine. Oh, and I never tell people, if you will not see this, I might say in passing, right? In passing, but I never focus on the healing. No. Because I eat good food anyway, so I'm not sick. Yeah, I'm 57, going on 58, right? And whatever, right? So, but the point is, this is the thing. If people are preparing you for sickness, already, I'm setting you up to sell you some fake land. Yeah? I tell you certain good stories about people who have helped acquire, right, like that. So if people are preparing us to eat really bad food and to consume a lot of medicine, because that's the industry they're in. They are mega. So they want us to take medicine. They say, oh, you can eat carrot, it has vitamin C. Very soon, or beta carotene. Very soon, you can expect there will be beta carotene tablets. Oh, forget about the carrots, they're from Nyandarua. They have this, bam, you take beta carotene. You start telling them food is medicine slowly. Then before, people will be taking medicine for breakfast, medicine for lunch, and medicine for dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great background, and it's well explained. Some of the interesting part, and especially when we talk about food literacy, is how we actually prepare our own food. Because you might have really, really good organic food, but then when it comes to preparation and how you prepare it, you don't quite get the benefits that you're supposed to get. One of the most interesting ways that I saw you actually prepare your food, you can prepare food without using oil and also using water. How is that possible? Will that even food actually have a taste at all?
Yeah, well, if I've made, that's why I gave the price of some of the prices of my dinners. If I'm pricing, then that's how I cook, and I'm not a caterer. So one, I don't prepare food commercially. Like, you will not pay me to cook food; it's not organic. So I'll only cook organic food. If not organic, I don't cook it. So I'm in a particular market. Right? I know what my purpose is, right? So just context. Now, so I prepare food and I eat food. I will not eat food that's not good tasting for myself. And other people eat food and they like the food so far, right? So this is the thing. There are things we have come to accept as being standard. Yeah? So that's the first point. And they are not true. You cannot, I think women are stupid, or women can't drive, women can be makanga. You see, it's not true. Then when we become them, they'll say, oh, okay, now I see you. I was thinking only men can be makanga or drivers, like that, right? So that's one. Then the other thing is, when you kill a people's consciousness, it limits their creativity, right? And I only see people. The first thing they say, hata tupiki leo, why? Hatuna mafuta. Why is written in stone that you have to cook without? That's number one. So now, when you turn the tables and start towards raising your consciousness, you realize that those ideas that are not true, that we were imposed upon us, are not necessarily true. That's number one. But also they are dangerous. I'll tell you why. One, we start from the oil. You'll be hard-pressed for 100,000 right now to find healthy oil within a mile radius here. Majority of the oils are going to be toxic oil, because one, they are not going to be organic. That's number one. Number two, they are not going to be cold pressed. So this is the thing about oil. All oils have what is called smoke point. If you cook that oil beyond that smoke point, it becomes rancid and it becomes toxic to you. Now, how many people do you see cooking oil have a thermometer to tell when the oil hits smoke point? That's number one. Number two, how many people know that certain oils have smoke point? So you use certain oils, like olive oil, for example, has a very low smoke point. So, and that's the first thing you start cooking. So you put the oil first, then you put the kitungu, then you put the nyanya, like that. So oil is always first or second. You can't start cooking the kitungu without the oil. So that's what you cook the most. So you pass the smoke point. So I get rid of that. That's the one. Number two, now I talk about the science of my cuisine. I've reduced cooking to three things: water, temperature, and flavor. Nothing else. I haven't heard anybody who can tell me cooking any more than three things. It has flavor, it has water, or it has temperature. If you put kitungu in the pot and you start, and what the cooking is a balance between the amount of water in the pot, in the food, and the rate at which the heat is evaporating the water. If you use a very wide pot to cook just one tomato, it'll burn. It'll start burning it's only one tomato with a pot this big, na moto inawaka, it's going to burn. But if you use a small pot, like kadogo kakupika maybe a small pan to cook an egg is very small surface area. So the evaporation rate is small relative to the amount of water in it. So what I do, I make sure I use the right size pot to make sure I have a balance of the heat and the evaporation rate. That's number one. So if I put onions, I put carrots, for example, I put eggplant, I'm just using an example, and I put chayote first. Yeah? Then I put the kitungu, pamoja. There is enough water and the heat is not so big to cook this food before the food start burning. Unaelewa? Then by the time start burning, now I put the starch. And I know I'm cooking, I cook kidogo, I add the next thing, maji tena. Every time I add something in the pot, it lowers the temperature. Because it was whole hot, and I also add the amount of water is fresh, like that. So if you cook, that's how I cook. And then at the very end, I add the oil, like olive oil when the food is cooked, kidogo. But I don't cook with the oil. That's how I do. So I have no rancid oil. I have no oil that's cooked beyond smoke point. I don't use an excessive amount of oil. I don't use cheap oil because now I will only just a tidbit of oil. Kidogo tu kumwagilia unaonja tu when you eat. And the food is perfect.
Yeah, it's quite actually. You will be hard pressed to find anyone who knows what is a smoke point, right? It's the first time I'm also hearing about it. So is this like the temperature at which, like the optimal temperature?
But beyond that point, the oil is disintegrate. Ni kama vile ukiwa na ice, ukiweka temperature fulani inakuwa maji.
So on average, which temperature is this?
Oh, different oils. So the funny thing is, another reason why food is political, because more and more people, that research is coming out. Certain companies are running ahead, are getting ahead of the market, and they're starting to put a barometer behind the oil bottle on there. You'll see the barometer, it'll tell you the smoke point of this sunflower oil is maybe 300, whatever degrees. So it's there, you can tell this is the temperature. But even if they tell, are they selling barometers along with it? Who will know that, okay, this is 300 now? They won't know, right? So it is a science now we are learning. But people who are in the know, who are, what they call people who are wealthy, people, it's not prestige, what's the word you use? People who are high class, quote unquote. Then they'll have this information. They have access to the information than the people who are in lower classes like that. So they know. So they know if you cook this oil beyond this point, it becomes rancid and becomes toxic to you.
What happens then if the oil becomes rancid? What effect does it have?
When you change the chemical properties of something, then it is unstable. Then it'll cause harm to your health.
And in this case, you will recommend what kind of oils then?
Okay, one, I recommend that you don't cook up with oil. And if you do, because we can do it, because it's like this is the safest. Now, if I tell you, if I like giving a child a car, drive, but when you get to this point, if you have emergency, it's a child, they don't know how to drive. The best thing for them is call somebody to come and take them there. So this is the same thing with oil. The oils are very complex, and there are so many different types, right? But there are options. There's something like taro, from beef. There's a much higher smoke point, right? That's number one. But also just be conscious of the fact that don't cook your oil too much, see, right? And you don't have to start with the oil. You can add the oil to musho. Yeah. So my recommendation is learn how to cook without oil, without starting with oil, and then you add the oil. I always have oil, and I love different types of oil. I love coconut oil. I love olive oils and oils. I love avocado oil, like that. Macadamia oil. Why? For their flavors. But I understand. I master the art of using them. Yeah, it's one thing to have a blender. But if you don't know how to use the blender, what is the blender good to you? It won't add any value to you. I'll give you a quick example. I was talking to my brother yesterday, Masharia, and he's my political science, first political science teacher. He's my oldest brother. So he was playing the Falakuti music. So all my work has imprints over. I don't know what it is that I've done that my brother hasn't had some impact or caused me to go in that direction. Yeah, so we were talking, and he also understands politics very well than anybody else in my family. So There's this traditional cocoyams in my community called Domashia Mwanake. People hate them because they take so long to cook. People say it has this, when you eat a banana, a raw banana skin, it's called my cat, it has this sap that is not very pleasant. Even people don't like to peel raw bananas and boil them because it sticks on your hands, that kind of thing. So it has something like that. So incidentally, 2 days ago, I prepared one of my favorite recipes to date using that yam. I went to the village, it was there, and I'm curious because of the story. It's called Domayam Wanake, means the cocoyam of strong men, young men, like when you're warriors, when you're in that warrior class, Anake, you're not an older, that's when you're most vibrant. And I say, why would they call this yam the yam of the men who are most vibrant, like strong, like that? So for my own curiosity, intellectual curiosity, I took it. And I tried to cook it with different ways. At first, I didn't like it. And then I made one recipe. And that recipe was a killer. After the show, I'll show you a picture of it. But anyway, now here we are. We are learning different ways of cooking the things we do. So that's where food literacy comes from. That we get ourselves out of these ideas. There's only one way of cooking food and one way. And that one white way, in fact, not only one way, one white way of cooking food. And that's the only way we have one white way of thinking about food. That's what it indicates, points to. That we have to crash and decolonize that aspect. That we have only one white way of thinking about food. So we think differently about food. Yes, and we create. And for me, and by the way, I never say anywhere the mind is the standard, is the best. I say I'm trying to make the best I can, so that I challenge other people to do the best, so they can make far exceed anything I've ever thought. They can even wow me. I say, wow, man, I'm always looking for that. That's why I mentor young people, man, like you and others, man, any way I can to open ways for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways I learn a lot is through your blog posts as well. That you write really, really very insightful, and gives us a lot of information and a view really into your mind and how you think on some of these things. And I was thinking, when you're talking about food literacy, for me, I find it a bit paradoxical when it comes, for example, to the United States, right? One would assume this is a country that has the highest literacy rates. Like, a lot of people are well learned and well read. They have the best universities anyway, and they have higher rates of exposable income, right? They can buy a lot of things that they want, but they also have like a lot of people who are obese and who are malnourished from that sense. So how does this paradox make sense? Why is it that one of the highly literate countries also happens to have one of the worst health?
Perfect question. You couldn't have asked me a better question, man. Now, after this, we can just go. Just turn the lights off and go, man. Number one, I alluded to it, but my answers are long because I'm just, I like to think, and I like to, this is something favorite to me. But I also want to make sure I share more information. So for brevity's sake, I did not delve into it. I just alluded to it. I say, simply because you're talking about Europeans or white group, it's only a small group of people who are using the bigger group for their own selfish gain. So it simply doesn't mean you're American and you belong to America or you're white. And white power, the power is largely, that driving the world, at least in this part of the world, is European, is Eurocentric. Doesn't mean that you're any better than you, me, and you. But in a lot of times, we are way, way better than them. And I want to put a caveat. You say they have a big, a high disposable income, Europeans, yeah, could be, but not necessarily. I have young people who I advise, I mentor across the races and countries. I do have a very, very dear friend, a colleague also. She's European, she's married, and she's a big supporter of my work, Another thing that I'll be remiss if I don't mention is there's no way I could do the work that I do if I didn't have people who are always there, stand for me, and make things a whole lot easier and possible for me to do it, right? So she'll support us. So if I have a small project I want to do, she'll support. She'll tell other people. She'll recommend me to speak some whatever. So my friend is married. She has a degree, and the husband has a degree as well. So they're graduates. They have decided that they cannot have a child because they have student loans. Both of them have student loans, and they cannot afford to pay for childcare and a house. So you either choose. They either have choice. They have to have a child, or they have to have a house. So they chose to have a house and not to have children, because they have over 100,000, which is 13 million shillings worth of student loan debt. 13. I don't know the husband. The wife is much bigger. We talk more than the husband. I knew them before, the wife before they got married, like that. So, and she's very passionate about food. But anyway, the point is, if we just assume that 26 million in student loans for one family, then the house they live in that region, I know where they live because I've been there. They've hosted me many times, and so the house is maybe about 40 million for the house. So it's about 40 million for the house. So you can imagine what the percentage is, about 300,000 or 200,000 or like that per month. So if they pay the student loan, they have not eaten, they have paid insurance, life insurance, anything. They haven't paid for the light bill, for the electricity, for water, they haven't done that. Right? So there's no way. So a lot of people are in the United States are really, really, really oppressed by the system. It's very, very vampiristic. It's not only oppressing us. so just for clarity. So now, we go back to what you asked. You asked about the paradox. The paradox is not a paradox, really. It's the system is set up for just a small group of people, as I alluded just in passing, to control everything. So they are the few people who are in power. And they started, at least, and maybe not historically correct, but at least for our case, we can say that in England, you have, in 1099, the Battle of Hastings, a family from France led the invasion of England, and they control it to this day. They are the loyal family. Those are what you call the family. So they're a small group. They are not. They still get paid. So you understand where I'm going. They're a small group of people who control it, and that's what you think the paradox. And they use all of us, and everybody is playing a role in the part of the system. So the people in the United States have to take loans. For us, we have to give resources. For the youth people, they have to grow coffee, for the system to work.
Yeah. So a large majority of people in the United States and in Europe are really trapped in this system. Like, they don't have room for them to wiggle or to just think outside the box. Maybe opt for a better, let's say, food for themselves, simply because they don't have the means to do so.
And they have to take a vacation. So it's a consciousness. I love the question you asked, and that we delve into what consciousness is. You have a conscience. I have a big disagreement with some of my people in the family and stuff, because we have values that are not our values. They are values of the system, of the consciousness that is driving the world. So we say, I have to take a vacation every week. I do this, and so you eat bad food so that you take a vacation. And you go and take a vacation there and you eat bad food. You know what I'm saying? So these ideas that are not neither here nor there. But I have to say, though, again, I'll be remiss if I don't point this, that the trend is changing. There is a report that came out that since 2024, actually more Americans are getting out of America than people who are going in. They're going to Spain, they're going to Mexico. People are leaving America. You can't live. How can you live like that? Just like explain. You can't have children. You can't have a house. One of my sister's neighbor, my sister was telling me about the neighbor who has a daughter. She graduated, she has student loan. She can't buy a house because she has student loans, so she has to still live with the parents. So can you, I don't know, think, my brother, think about just a simple concept. I don't know, maybe I've already made my time. When I was young and we were dating, you never worried, this girl that I'm talking, how much student loan do they have? Can you imagine what a ton of that is? that I see a woman, I say, man, I really love that man, or I love that girl. But man, she has 200,000 student loans. Shit, man, I'm not dealing with that. I will never move forward. I want children. So we can have children. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people I talked, somebody who came to visit me, my farm yesterday, and they want to go to America. They were surprised. People are leaving America. Why? Because the idea you have in America is an America that was probably like that when we went and before. Now America is very different. Rent is very high. The house rates are very, very expensive because America borrowed from its future. If they borrow the future, money from the future. Now we have to pay. Somebody has to pay. Yes. America has a debt of 37 trillion. Do you know what the global trillion market is for the whole world? If you take all the things that are in the market in the whole world, they are 150 to 155 trillion. Okay, the whole world. If you sell everything in the market right now, right? America has a debt of 37 trillion. So they almost have 25% of it. So it will never be paid. So they are paying an interest rate of 1 trillion just on that debt. Only 1 trillion out of that debt. So it will never be paid. So that's why America is stealing everything they can. From Venezuela, they take. From Greenland, they take Greenland. And even if they take everything from everywhere, they can't pay that debt. Because the people live, they have other things, they have expenditures, they have to control, they have to have military everywhere they take. So I'm saying all that to say that there's a possibility of a new game change.
Yeah. And it's the same thing I was about to ask you. And, a lot of people are in this system. They have been in this matrix, if you may, and they're trying to see ways that they can get out and what they can do for themselves to get out of this system. But one of the things that I observed is you are also an organic farmer, and you have your own farm, and you've been doing so for a while now. What do you like most about being an organic farmer?
So first thing I like most, at least right now, I'm super excited about is the community it's building. I have a good friend, very good neighbors, the Sinket, they are Masai family, and Luya, wife, very, very kind people. Now we've collaborated because they have a much bigger piece of land. I have some knowledge and this. I'm a little older, they are younger, they're my younger brother and sister now. And we are creating a community around it. So by working together, it is possible now for me to not eat food anywhere else except between me and their farm. Yeah, I was doing a lot of, I have all kinds of organic seeds there, but I can grow food. So it's the most localized food I've had access to in the last 35 years. Yes, since I've been living in the US. That's number one. Number two, and the other thing I'm really excited is for me, I'm creating a man farm where I'm not only farming food, but I'm farming elderhood or a new consciousness around men, especially. Most likely. Women do come, but my focus is men. That men, we can raise and farm just like we farm animals. We can farm new consciousness around manhood. So we have to start with boyhood, manhood, and elderhood. That's my biggest focus for the rest of my life before I transition into oblivion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best part, especially in helping out the boy child as well, because not a lot of people have a vision for the boy child, if you may, in terms of to just giving them direction, putting your hands on their shoulders and helping them show the path that yes, it's possible, or you just need to take this particular path. So I think that's an important part, and it also goes to show you when organic farming is talked about, it's just more than farming itself, right? I mean, the whole concept of organic is life. So how can you integrate all these parts of life so that you can have sort of a wholesome life on how to live? So whether it's from the soil, talking about the plants themselves, the food you're growing, the people you're impacting. So it's this wholesome way of living that I think you get to discover once you get into the journey of organic farming as well. That's a lot of people. It's a byproduct that doesn't get talked about a lot. So yeah, it's an interesting. So looking forward to that journey. Right now, you are hosting people. You're welcoming people, or not yet?
Yes, yeah, I'm welcoming people, and when they come, Marion is my co-farmer. She's the one, Marion Sinket, and we will do events between. We'll first tour, and then we eat. But then people are coming for counsel. For the last, I don't know how many. It's always men who are coming, and sometimes it's not because there is a problem. I've realized that there's small niche that men really don't. The places that men think they are going out to have fun, or to relax, or to visit, or to enjoy, are mostly stressful or mostly detrimental to them. People go to the club, like men go to the club, they go and drink alcohol and all this. But just to come and relax as men, and funny enough, my first customer was my brother. My brother is very smart in politics. He had this concept, and they are coming tomorrow. How much? I'm coming. And he said, I had a good, like that. So it's a place where you come and is very comfortable, very stress-free, hassle, not noise, very good food, because all the food we eat, luckily the Sinket, Marion, and they have animals. So that we can have milk, and they have enough land. They are grazed milk. You know how rare and expensive grazed milk, where the animals are never fed anything from the store. They're just grazing the area. So it's also very localized. We're very, very, and funny. I was actually very surprised that, things like apples can grow in Kitengela. So they have apples, they have white support, they have papayas, they have all these different kind of apples. So when you talk about now only from the vantage point of cooking, I can't talk about paradise, man.
You reminded me of, I saw you talking about the importance of this food, especially for the gut health. I saw you talking about, is it Muratina? And the effect it has, especially for like the gut health. So you can just explain a little bit the impact that those kind of food have and the importance of really taking care of your gut health as well.
If there is the biggest battleground in the world right now, it's not in Afghanistan or Palestine, it's in your gut. Because that's the engine. So if your engine, if your car is damaged, it doesn't matter what kind of car, what kind of rims you have, what kind of paint job you have, right? And then we have come to realize, especially at this point, if somebody doesn't even remember your name or my name, I don't care. You can forget us. But don't remember this one aspect. Now, because of science, we've come to realize that we are 1% genetics, we are 99% microbiome. 1% genetics, 99% microbiome. So the microbiome are the bacteria that are around your ears, they're in your stomach, you have the microbiome. And they do the most work to make digestion take, or for you to be healthy. So I'll give you a quick example for the listeners. Zambia has the most number of twins. So one researcher was working in Zambia, and there was a famine around that time. And they realized that one woman had twins, and one boy was plump, big, much bigger, like on the heavy side, and the other one was emaciated. And the researcher was furious at the mother. I said, why are you favoring one child and not the other? I said, no, they eat the same. What? Around the same time, that's when the science of microbiome was hard. I say, wow. Maybe it might be their microbiome. They took the microbiome of one child, put it in the other child, and it's possible now. There is these tablets you can swallow. Then there is the feces that can be infused from one person to the other person's rectum, and the microbiome in colonizes, and you have healthy microbiome. One of the things that antibiotics do, they kill the microbiomes of you when they get in your gut. Bam! They devastate them, right? So, but the point is, when they put the microbiome into the other child gain weight just like this one. So the microbiome has such a big impact that you can be emaciated because of the microbiome you have there. So when we are taking certain foods, they are detrimental to our microbiome. Now, research also is showing that when children are born through C-section and they don't go through the birth canal, they have higher rates of allergies. So when they go through the birth canal, there is a microbiome they get. And these microbiomes protect them from, they become more helpful. In West Africa, I went to West Africa when I was in grad school for 3 months, and I was there. So one of the other things I found out that I didn't think much about it until this microbiome story came, is that, and it was somewhat similar in my culture, when a midwife comes to deliver the child, only the midwife, the pregnant mother or the pregnant person, and their mother, the maternal mother of the child to be born, to be delivered. And only them three are in the room, and the baby is delivered. In that culture that I'm talking about, the baby and the mother will stay inside the house for about 2 weeks. They would, and nobody else will come in, nobody else. That means the child only gets the microbiome of the mother. When you're having a baby delivered in the hospital, it will get the microbiome of the first person who touched them. My daughter has a picture with me with a band when she was delivered, me sleeping next to her. I have the band because I stay with my daughter, and my daughter thinks just like her dad. Nobody understands me like my daughter, Modoni. She can go on Instagram, you can listen to her talking about her father. So microbiome is very important. So when you eat these foods like we're talking about Moratina, local foods in Kitengela, we're growing there using the manure of the same animals that we are raising there. Then we bring the food. We create is a very, very limited circle of food. Very, very, very limited, and we are producing a lot of food. I was counting this morning before I came very early because I had to make some preparation. In one section, I counted 70 different things that we are growing. 70, not all, but 70 so far. And then again, we're starting. I'm not trying to make this idea in a hurry. We have a very big farm. It's perfect. We are growing. We just started. At least for me, I've been in 4 months now, and I'm really, really pushing. Matter of fact, I'm only now eating some of the first Demeter food that I got from the seeds that I got from Germany and stuff. And I'm really making. I had an older farm in where I was born, so I'm getting the cocoyams from there, the bananas from there, and we make really good stuff. But back to your point is that when you eat that kind of food, it promotes your microbiome. That's a long story to say. And when you promote the microbiome, think about this twin who was thin. The other one was very, very, very emaciated, and he gained weight because of the microbiome. The microbiome is a big science, man, and we don't have enough time to talk about it.
Absolutely. I mean, something that I'm surprised about, that it can actually be transferred by just being in contact with somebody else.
Yes. You have microbiomes everywhere, in your skin, in your ears, in your nose. Oh, last one, man. Man, please allow me just say one. Think about this. You know about cows, yeah? Have you ever been around cows? Yeah. Good. They eat every day, right? Yeah. Do they brush their teeth? Other animals, do they brush their teeth? Okay. Then somebody came and told us, we eat, and we use a chemical to brush our teeth, that in the back of it, it says, if you swallow, call the poison control. What do you think that's possibly doing to the microbiome of our mouth? So every morning you wake up, you poison the microbiome in your mouth with a chemical because, I'm brushing my teeth. Why are you brushing your teeth? Oh, I want my teeth to be white or to be dirty. What are you eating that's making your teeth so dirty that you have to use corrosive stuff? Like steel wire. It's because you're eating bad food. So when I told you consciousness, man, I wish we had 10 hours to just kind of sit down and just meditate on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these kind of things, you never get enough time to talk about them. And it's quite interesting you mentioned about how microbes can actually be transferred from parent to child. I think we observe this in nature as well. When a cow gives birth as well, the first thing actually when it gives birth is just goes to the baby itself and starts just licking it around. And we know that the milk that the cow produces in the first few years are very full of microbiomes that makes the baby healthy. So if you observe nature, I think some of these things you can see them all over. It's just now when you're talking about consciousness, now it makes sense, right? You have to be aware of these things that you're seeing in nature. So very, very good. As we finish, I'm wondering if you ever think about how you like people to remember you and some of the things that you've discovered. Let's say a few years from now, how would you like people to describe you or just to view you and your contribution that you've had into the food discussions?
There's two parts to that. One is honesty. Honest. I live an honest life. I told you the most difficult thing I recognize is for a black person to be honest. I'm saying now as a black. Now I know if I'm talking in the larger context, talking in the world, in the world stage, I know is we are all black, white, yellow. We are all part of a people who are oppressed by a ruling class, right? So it's very hard to be honest about our situation relative to power, that we are powerless. The way we our role in this game is us to have power. That's number one. So honest. My sister attended a dinner in the U.S. for the first time, one time. And at the middle of the dinner, my sister was visibly disturbed and came and said, Kabui, why are you talking about white people and they are the majority of the people they're paying you? I said, oh, you think these people are irritated because I'm telling the truth? When they pay, I want them to give you the money. You will receive. They say, Kabui is a check. I say, you take it. Look at all those payments. You know the suggested price for the dinner and see whether there is a tip, right? In the U.S., it's very easy to know if somebody appreciates it. They give you a tip. If they give you a good tip, they really enjoy. So I'm saying that same to demonstrate that dishonesty that's inbuilt in oppressed people. Dishonesty. That my sister thought that I should be telling white people what they want to hear other than what I think is, right? So honesty. But honesty also has a different component because I'm being honest to my lineage. My father was a stand-up man. He was willing to lose his restaurant and he didn't care. My mother said, hey, maybe you should tell them, what are you doing? My father said, no, right? So I'm being honest in that way. But beyond that, I want people to know that everybody has some power to make some positive contribution in our struggle for liberation. For me, I've done my part, and when I die, I say I don't want people to give money. I don't want people to come to a funeral because I've lived a good life. That's the thing. I'm honest. I've made a contribution. It's three, really. I'm honest. I've made a contribution to the food, and I've lived a good life. Read the book by Good Life, by the way, by airlines called Nearing. There were professors in New York, and when they opposed the war, they were fired. Again, same thing. It's the same thing over. And these were like early 1910s, after the war of European War of 1914. So they were fired because they know these are game. These people are not fighting for justice. They are fighting for themselves. So anyway, what they did is they lived a simple life. They both went farming. They were growing food themselves and writing. It's very, very, very positive story of Ellen Scott Ehring. So I live an honest life. I live a very simple life. I don't have anything. I don't have any dreams for big houses or big cars or big name or big money. No. I live a small, honest life, and I want to make contribution. I've tried to excel as an African in pushing the food literacy, and it's all I'll do. I'll never do anything except food. If I don't do food, I'll die tomorrow. And you say, oh, you can do it. Okay, I'll die. Right? Like that.
As we finish, I usually have something I call rapid fire questions. I've prepared 10 questions for you. So the idea is I will throw these questions to you, and then you'll give me quick and short answers to the questions. So guys will be able to have a better idea about yourself. So are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. So the first question is, what is the first career you dreamt of having as a kid?
As a kid, I want to be a politician.
Second, what is the biggest lie the modern food industry has sold us?
That you don't have any choice but to rely on them. That they have solution. They're your best friend, only me.
Third question, what is the most underrated indigenous Kenyan food?
Most indigenous, cocoyams.
Fourth, what food would you remove from every Kenyan household tomorrow?
Oil. toxic oil.
The fifth question is, what's the biggest mistake modern parents are making when feeding their children?
They feed them for leisure and not for consciousness.
Sixth question, what book has shaped your thinking the most?
The autobiography of Malcolm X.
Seventh, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Fela Kuti, no hands down.
Eighth question, one food myth you wish will disappear tomorrow.
Oh, that fast food is fast to anything except death.
Ninth question, what is one quote you live by?
Live your best life.
And the last one, knowing what you don't now, what advice could you give to your 18-year-old self?
Man, fight there's no tomorrow. Without apologies. Take no prisoners.
All right. Those are 10 questions. Thank you very much for making time for the conversation. We've been going now for quite a while. And we couldn't create enough time to have these conversations. And I'm sure there are a lot of things we could have talked about, but we didn't talk about them. I'm sure a lot of guys who have listened to it will get to appreciate your perspective, your insights, and some of the wisdom you've been able to share with us. So you can just share with the guys. If someone wants to get in touch or just want to follow your work, you can just share with them how they can get in touch.
Yeah, I'm on social media, on Instagram, most actively, and on Facebook, Chef Kabui, or Njathi Kabui, which are my names. And also, just add that I also have a blog, chefkabui.com, where I write about the all eclectic stuff about food. That combines all the things I talked about here, Greek mythology, African mythology. I'm interested in small nuances that are, for example, I just acquired a pot. I didn't mention that. I acquire historical food stuff. Like I got a pot that was in one of the most brutal battle in Moranga, where a few weeks later, General Kago was killed. But it was on the hunt for him. And this pot was there and it was broken and I have it like that. So I acquire these things and sometimes I have showings for them. But so those are my social media handles. But also it's important for me to mention that in addition, I only talked about men, which is just probably half of the work that I do. But the other one is I like to host organizations that are doing progressive work. So men don't get appreciated, they don't get relaxed. But equally, and it's something I want to do about, is to host a team like yours. You don't have to do a couple of, just come and spend a day with us or a weekend with your team and relax, eat good food. You eat only organic food. You know, I don't know how many people have eaten organic food, not only one meal, one day. So you come, we relax, and we tour and Sinket Farm, and you relax there in Kitengela, and we pollinate each other's ideas, so that if you do ideas, there's something we'll learn from you and experience the wonderful team that you have. We'll learn something, and you leave your microbiome with us, and then you'll make some of that. So all these other organizations, mainly, I'm not doing weddings or whatever. That's what I would like to do. Keep energizing this movement, and nurturing this movement, and to raise the literacy level of, and we have a library as well, small library of food books and intellectual books like that. So you come just relax. We have a hammock for men. Every man who come here, they have to swing on the hammock. So that we have to, lack of a better word, we have to massage your consciousness, on the hammock. But that's it.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. And I think I have to put it down as my to-do list as well now to come by the farm. So looking forward to that. If you have enjoyed the podcast, of course, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. I think we are headed now to 14K. So our road now is to 20K subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that. Until the next podcast, remember to be organic. Cheers.